Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at slope. Slope is the measure of steepness of a line. The higher the slope in absolute value, the steeper the line is. We usually represent slope by the letter M, and that comes from the Greek word for mountain. It also comes for the English word for mountain, I guess, but that's where the M comes from. And the equation for it is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, where, didn't mean to do that, where we have the point x1 comma y1 and the point x2 comma y2. So we're going to be given 2 points. It doesn't matter which point we call x1, y1 and which point we call x2, y2, as long as you're subtracting the same point from the other one. So those both have to be the same point, and those have to be the same point, and that's the really important part to remember. So we're just going to do some examples. So find the slope between the 2 points, 3, 0 and negative 1, 2. So M is, I'm going to take, for the purposes of this one, I'm going to let the first point be x1, y1, the second one be x2, y2. But again, if you switch it, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the same thing at the end. So I'm taking the difference in my y's, so 2 minus 0, dividing it by the difference in my x's, negative 1 minus 3. Then I do it out, I get 2 over negative 4. Now it is a fraction, you always have to make sure that you simplify these. So this is the same as negative 1 over 2. So the negative tells me that my line is decreasing. A negative slope means my line is going down as I move from left to right. Let's look at another one, 4, 4, and 2, negative 3. So again, M is, I'm going to take the differences in my y's, negative 3 minus 4, and then the difference in my x's, 2 minus 4. It's going to give me negative 7 over negative 2, which again we simplify to 7 over 2. 7 over 2 is positive, and that means that my line is increasing as I move from left to right. So remember, a line goes off in both directions, but this increasing, decreasing is always as we move from left to right. And let's try 0, 0, and negative 3, 3. So I've got, again, my 3 minus 0, the difference in my y's, divided by negative 3 minus 0, the difference in my x's. And that's 3 over negative 3, which is negative 1. So again, negative 1 means my line is decreasing. In absolute value, this guy is bigger than this one, so that if I were to look at my lines, I would have a slope of negative 1, and then my slope of negative 1/2 is smaller in absolute value, which means that it's not as steep. Okay, so again, the higher the slope in absolute value, the steeper the line. If it's negative, then my line is decreasing, and if the slope is positive, then it's increasing. So 7 over 2 is the steepest. So if I were to draw it, here is my 7 over 2, and that, at least in theory, should be steeper than either of my other two slopes, or my other two lines. Let's do a couple more. How about 2, negative 5, and 1, negative 5? So the difference in my y's, negative 5 minus negative 5 over 1 minus 2. I end up with 0 over negative 1, which is 0. A slope of 0 says that there is no steepness, which means that if I was going to draw my line, there's no steepness, and it's only what we call running back and forth. So sometimes we think of the slope as rise over run. Right? The difference in y's is how much you're rising up and down. The difference in x is how much you're running side to side. So again, a slope of 0 means there's no rise, I'm only running. So it's what's called horizontal. Versus 3, negative 5, and 3, 5. So then I have 5 minus negative 5 over 3 minus 3, which is 10 over 0. Remember, you cannot divide by 0. That is undefined. A line with a slope that is undefined means there's no run and there's only a rise. So if I'm not running and I'm only rising, I have a vertical line. So be careful when you say no slope, because some people mean a slope of 0 and some people mean an undefined slope. So try not to use the word no slope and use 0 or undefined, because they're two very, very different types of lines. And let's do one more. 12, 8 and 8, 20. So you have 20 minus 8 on top, 8 minus 12 on the bottom. That gives us 12 over negative 4, which gives us negative 3. So fairly steep lines, almost as steep as the 7 over 2 that we had earlier. And again, it's negative, which means my line is decreasing. Okay, so play around with the equation. Make sure you know how to do it on your calculator. Keep order of operations in mind. And let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.